This is the third episode of the CSS Battle Breakdown series. My name is Michael Dawson, and in this series of videos, I am completing the challenges on the CSS Battle website. Today I am explaining Target 3 push button of the first battle, Pilot Battle. I will demonstrate how to solve this challenge as well as why I solve it the way I do. CSS Battle is a site that hosts competitions where you try and replicate an image using CSS and HTML using the fewest numbers of characters possible in your code. This includes whitespace and comments. You are scored on how accurately you match the image and how little code is used. There are 4 steps in my solving process. The first step is evaluating the target. Considering what elements you could use to make up the target and determining which solving method to pursue. The second step is target duplication. This step is about getting it working. That means simple and straightforward code without any tricks or shortcuts to ensure that the method chosen in step 1 works. The third phase is code optimization. This means that I will remove any duplicate attributes and try to make the code as efficient as possible. Finally, I will minimize the code to achieve the best possible score. Battle number 1 on cssbattle.dev is called Pilot Battle. It contains 12 targets. I will be covering the third target, which is called Push Button. Now we will first evaluate Push Button and figuring out how this target could be created. The first thing to note is the light blue background. As usual, there is not much to consider here other than the color. The next thing to consider is the blue rearmost element. This could either be 2 vertical rectangles or 1 large horizontal rectangle. For simplicity's sake, we shall be considering it a large rectangle with the middle covered. The final thing to consider is the 3 concentric circles in the middle. This can be taken in 2 ways. The first is as 3 separate circles layered on top of each other, or the simpler form of a gold circle with a dark blue and a light blue border. For the sake of keeping the code short, we will consider this as a single circle, to avoid the extra code needed to center multiple objects. Now we have a plan. We will make a light blue background with a large rectangle and a circle with 2 thick borders. We will start as usual by clearing the work area. Unlike my previous videos, I replaced this with the default text from when you start a new target. Feel free to pause if you want to read the comment about the rules and scoring. First we will add our obligatory body tag, for the sake of good form rather than necessity. Next we will add a div to our rectangle. For easy identification, it has been given a class of rectangle to easily distinguish it. We will copy that div and change the class of the new div to circle. Now that we have our base HTML, we need to add some style. We will start with the rectangle. We will give it an initial size of 350 by 200 pixels, and copy the dark blue from our palette into the background attribute. We will set the position to be fixed. It is now that I notice that it isn't showing up in the output. I accidentally used color instead of background, so I'll go back and fix that. Next, it is time to position the rectangle. After a little fiddling, the top is set to 75 pixels and the height reduced to 150 pixels. The left is positioned at 50 pixels, and it appears that my initial guess of 300 pixels was correct for the width of the box, as it seems to be correctly aligned. After that, we will remove the glaring white background by styling the body and giving it the light blue color from the palette. All that is left now is a circle. We'll change its background to gold and then give it an initial size of 50 by 50 pixels. It appears as a square right now, but adding a border radius of 50% will trim down the corners until it is a circle. We know our canvas is 400 pixels wide and our circle is 50 pixels wide. To get the circle into the center, we will subtract half the circle's width from half the canvas width. 200 minus 25 is 175 pixels. We now have our left position. We will do the same thing for the top. 150 minus 25 is 125 pixels. It lines up perfectly. It looks like we have guessed the size correctly. Now for the 2 borders. You cannot technically have 2 borders on an element. If you want layered borders, you will need to add a layer of elements for each level of border. So instead of a literal border, we will instead use the box shadow attribute. A box shadow can have any number of shadows layered on top of each other. The first 3 arguments for the box shadow are vertical and horizontal offsets, as well as the blur. We want these to appear as borders, so we'll set these three properties to 0. The last two properties are size, which we set to 100 pixels, and the color, which becomes the same light blue as the background. I copy the shadow, adding the copy to the end of the box shadow attribute with a comma separating it from the first shadow. The color is changed to the same dark blue as the rectangle, and the size is set to 50 pixels. As you can probably see, the second shadow does not appear. That is because shadows are displayed in reverse order. So the first shadow will be at the bottom, and the last one will be on the top. I find this incredibly unintuitive, so I often put them in the wrong order. It is easily fixed by reversing the order of the shadows. We submit our completed code and it is a perfect match. The score for this solution is 605.18 using 456 characters. Now, let's see how we can clean this code up. First, we will extract the position fixed from the circle and rectangle and move it up into a div element style. And that is pretty much it. After we submit, that raises our score to 605.65 with 447 characters, a benefit of 9 characters for 0.47 points. I know it's not the most impressive gain, but we were not aiming for points here, just optimization. Now we will work on wringing out as many points from this target as we can. First, we will move the position fixed out of div and into the body style, and convert the body style into an everything style. That's a whole style block eliminated. Now for some reason, this changed the position of the elements. They're still centered horizontally, but they have moved vertically. Not entirely sure why this happened, because position fixed acts in relation to the viewport. There should have been no margin shenanigans when we made the change. Since they did change, however, I will tweak them back into place. Next, I will remove the space between the size and the color of the box shadow. The box shadow is one of those odd attributes that actually requires units instead of defaulting to pixels. Fortunately for us, the units act as enough of a separator that an additional space is not needed. Now the body tag goes away, since the browser will generate that auto-magically. So too does the closing style, brace, and semicolon, as the browser will also generate those. Now we remove the white space and any px units that would be used by default. And we submit, but we only have a 99.8% match. Apparently my adjustment for the vertical positioning was a little off, so I tweak it until we get a perfect match. Now after submitting, the solution was 100% match, using 236 characters for 642.19 points. This is probably the best score we could get following our original plan. But by throwing away what our brains think is the correct way to write CSS, we can actually find a big improvement in our score. Since we are going to be doing some weird stuff, let's add those extra bits of white space back to make the code readable again. We are going to reduce this code even further by removing a p tag, leaving only one p acting as a circle. Since this is the only p, we can remove the custom attribute, making it even shorter. Then we will move the position fixed tag to the p selector, as it's the only thing that will be using it. Now this is where the magic happens. We will add a style for the body, and give the body the blue background of the rectangle. Since the star gives a light blue background to everything, including the HTML tag itself, the light blue background is still present. Now we adjust the margins of the background so that it is correct size. Vertical margins of 75 pixels and horizontal margins of 50 pixels. Now the entire R attribute is no longer needed, so that whole block of styling can be disposed of. Now to package everything back up. We will remove the semicolon from the asterisk background since it's the only attribute. Then remove all of the white space and submit. And we got a new high score, beating my previous record by 1 character and our previous solution by 30 characters. Our new score is 656.15 points, using 206 characters. Thanks for watching. Please click the like button if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe so that you can be alerted to the videos I release in the future. If you have any tips, tricks, or techniques, or even just a better way to do this target that I overlooked, please share them down in the comments so that we can all get better at coding.